There is a mystery woven into the fabric of the universe, a truth older than the stars, deeper than the oceans, and more unshakable than the foundations of the earth. God is sovereign. He reigns not just in heaven above, but in the hidden details of your life. His throne is not only established in eternity, but in the very circumstances you face today. And yet, how often do we try to wrest control from the one who holds all things? We are taught to understand, to figure out, to reason. We are trained to demand answers, to make sense of suffering, to seek clarity before we move. But the kingdom of God does not function according to the logic of man. His ways are not our ways. His timing does not move according to our clocks. His decisions, they often confound us, bewilder us, even wound us, until we look again and see that they were not meant to harm but to heal. He who formed galaxies with a word and painted the skies with stars does not require our permission to write the chapters of our lives. He is not elected, not advised, not restrained. He acts from wisdom eternal and love, unfathomable. And so what he allows with purpose. What he withholds with grace. What he decides not from a place of indifference, but of divine intention. Yet when that decision touches your life, when it interrupts your plan, when it silences your dream, when it closes the door you've been begging to open, it is there that the soul is tested. Will you trust the sovereignty of God when his will contradicts your own? Will you still say he is good when you don't understand the path he has chosen? You see, peace is not found in understanding everything God does. Peace is found in trusting him, even when you understand nothing at all. Because his sovereignty is not a concept to be grasped. It is a truth to be embraced. It is not cold. It is not mechanical. It is alive. It is compassionate. It is drenched in mercy and truth. And it is the only solid ground in a world of shifting sand. Abraham was told to leave everything behind and go to a land he did not know. God did not give him a map, only a promise. Why? Because the point was never the destination, but the trust. He obeyed not because he saw the end, but because he believed in the one who authored it. Moses was led into a wilderness not toward comfort, but into confrontation. Not toward prosperity, but into obedience. And when the Red Sea blocked the way, the people cried out, not in faith, but in fear. Yet the sea did not part for the fearful. It parted at the command of the one who reigns over water and land. And all of it, every turn, every trial, was orchestrated under divine sovereignty. There is nothing random in the hand of God. No loss unmeasured, no delay unseen. The job you didn't get, the relationship that ended, the door that slammed shut. These are not accidents of fate. They are the fingerprints of a Father who knows where the road leads, even when it bends through shadows. To accept God's decision is to relinquish your illusion of control. It is to fall back into the arms of the Almighty and say, you lead, I'll follow. And that surrender, though it may come with tears, though it may come through struggle, is the beginning of peace. Because peace is not passive, it is not weak, it is not naive. Peace is the fruit of alignment with heaven. It is the reward of trusting the Sovereign One in the silence, in the mystery, in the pain. And make no mistake, the sovereignty of God is not negated by your pain. In fact, it is most present in it. When Lazarus lay in the tomb and all hope was gone, it was not the end. It was a setup for glory. But Mary and Martha didn't see it. They saw delay. They saw disappointment. But Jesus saw resurrection. The decision to wait, to stay 2 more days, to arrive after death had done its worst. That decision was sovereign. And in the end, it revealed a deeper truth. That God's delays are not denials, and his decisions are not defeats. So when he says no, it is because he knows. When he says wait, it is because he sees beyond the veil. And when he changes your path, it is because the road you were on could not carry the weight of his purpose for you. His sovereignty does not need your agreement, only your trust. There is a divine tension that lives in the heart of every believer, the tension between what we desire and what God decides. It is the wrestling ground of faith, the sacred place where will meets will, and where the soul either hardens in resistance or softens in surrender. From the moment Adam stretched out his hand toward the forbidden tree, humanity has been locked in a struggle, not with evil, not with man, but with the will of God. We want peace, but we want it on our terms. We want joy, but we want to dictate the path. Yet peace never flows from the throne of self. It flows from the throne of surrender. There is a secret the saints knew, a truth hidden in plain sight. Peace does not come when the struggle ends, but when the heart bows. It comes not after the storm passes, but in the storm, when the soul says, "Even here I trust you." You can wrestle with God's will, question his timing, resist his ways, and you may feel the shaking, the inner turbulence, the weight of trying to carry what was never yours to hold. But the moment you surrender, a quiet comes. Not because the world has changed, but because you've stepped out of the driver's seat and let God take his rightful place. Look at Jacob, the one who wrestled all night by the riverbank on day. A man who spent his life striving for blessing, striving for position, striving for control. And yet it was not in his striving that he found peace, but in his breaking. He wrestled with God and came away limping, but also came away with a new name, Israel, Prince with God. He was wounded, yes, but also transformed. It was the surrender, not the struggle, that changed him. The peace of God is not found in fighting his will, but in yielding to it. The carnal heart wants to debate, to argue, to justify its own path, but the Spirit calls us higher. The Spirit says, "Come and die to your plan, and you will rise with mine." For every Gethsemane has its prayer, and every follower of Christ must kneel at least once and say, "Not my will, but yours be done." That is not the cry of weakness. It is the anthem of those who walk in divine strength. That is the moment when the battle turns, not outside you, but within you. Even the Son of God, perfect and sinless, felt the weight of the Father's will. In that garden soaked with anguish, Jesus did not deny his pain, but he laid it down. He did not deny the coming cross, but he embraced it. Why? Because beyond the cross was glory. Beyond the grave was resurrection. But peace did not wait for Easter morning. It came in the garden when the will was surrendered and heaven's plan accepted. Your peace will not be found in getting what you want, but in aligning with what God wants. There are things you prayed for that he said no to, not because he wanted to withhold, but because he wanted to protect. There are paths you tried to force open that he closed, not to punish you, but to redirect you. And you fought him, didn't you? You argued with the silence. You cried over the closed doors. You shouted into the heavens asking why. But now you see, had you received what you demanded, it would have broken you. Had he said yes to your prayer, you would have missed the miracle. The delay was mercy. The denial was love. The redirection was redemption. Oh. There is a peace that surpasses understanding, but you cannot have both. You can have understanding, or you can have peace, because understanding demands answers, and peace only demands trust. And trust does not grow in comfort. It grows in surrender. It grows when you stop striving, stop proving, stop trying to make everything bend to your will. It grows when you unclench your fists and open your hands to heaven and say, "You lead, and I will follow, even when I don't see." The war inside will not end with more effort. It will end with less. Not more strategy, but more surrender. Not more noise, but more stillness. For the soul that yields to God's will does not lose. It gains rest for its weariness. It gains clarity in the chaos. It gains clarity in the chaos. It gains a peace the world cannot touch, because it flows from a place the world cannot reach. When the striving ceases and the yielding begins, peace enters, not as an emotion, but as a person. He is the Prince of Peace, but he does not reign in rebellion. He reigns in surrender. And if you would have peace, you must first bow, not because you are defeated, but because in surrender, you are finally free. There are moments in life when everything we've built, everything we've planned seems to unravel before our eyes. The doors close, the path vanishes, and we stand at a crossroads, bewildered, questioning, grasping for meaning. Why did the dream fall apart? Why did God allow the detour, the delay, the disruption? But to those who walk with him, there is another question, one far more important than a why. The question is, what if this detour is the destination in disguise? God's decisions are not confined to the calendar of man. His purposes are not bound by what we call logic or efficiency. The way he moves is ancient, mysterious, deliberate. What we see as interruptions, he sees as divine intersections. What we call delays, he calls preparations. What we view as random, he weaves into purpose with precision. His decisions are not bound to this moment. They are tied to eternity. The journey of life is not a straight road, but a winding path of valleys and mountains, deserts and rivers. And God leads not always by the shortest distance, but by the most purposeful route. When Israel was freed from Egypt, God did not take them the direct way to Canaan. He led them the long way around through the wilderness. not because he lacked a better route, but because he was shaping a people. What looked like a detour was actually destiny. What seemed like wandering was preparation, and every step was ordained. God's decisions do not exist in isolation. They are threads in a tapestry far bigger than our momentary view. David was anointed king, but did not ascend to the throne immediately. He was hunted, hidden in caves, exiled from his own people. It looked like the promise had failed. But in those caves, God forged a king. In the hiding, he formed character. In the running, he built resilience. What seemed like a detour was the very road that led to the fulfillment of the promise. The divine timeline does not operate according to earthly deadlines. You may think you've missed your window, that the opportunity passed you by. But God does not miss appointments. What he begins, he finishes. What he delays, he redeems. And often, the very thing we fear as a setback is the stage being built for something far greater than we imagined. Consider the story of Ruth. Her husband dies. Her dreams are buried in Moab. She chooses to follow Naomi into a land not her own, with no promise of provision. She could not have known that in her sorrow, God was orchestrating lineage. She did not see that her pain would become the doorway to destiny, that her name would be written into the line of Messiah. To the world, she was a widow. To God, she was a vessel of prophecy. The decision to follow Naomi may have seemed small, even foolish, but it was divine, was eternal. There is a rhythm to God's decisions, a cadence not of chaos, but of divine choreography. He does not act without purpose. He does not permit without plan. Every closed door carries a hidden yes. Yes. Every unanswered prayer holds a higher answer. The illness that slowed you down, the job that slipped away, the relationship that ended. None of these are wasted. When surrendered to God, they become seeds. And seeds must fall, must break, must be buried. Only then do they rise. The decisions of God echo with purpose, even when they pass through pain. Joseph's brothers sold him into slavery. He was falsely accused. He was forgotten in prison. Yet when the moment came, he stood before Pharaoh and said, "What you meant for evil, God meant for good." That is the language of one who sees from heaven's view. That is the voice of someone who has accepted that the detours were actually directions. God is not merely reactive. He is proactive. He is not managing crises. He is orchestrating glory. He does not scramble to fix your broken plans. He writes better ones, and those plans may take you into places you never expected. Wildernesses, valleys, silence, waiting. But none of it is wasted. The divine decision to take you the long way, the hard way, the quiet way, that decision is a path carved by the hands of love. When God redirects your steps, he's not abandoning you. He's inviting you into something deeper, something eternal. His purposes stretch beyond this season, beyond what you see, into generations yet to come. The decision you resist today may be the very decision that brings salvation, restoration, redemption, not only to you, but to those around you. There is a stillness that exists beyond the reach of chaos, a calm that remains untouched by the storms of life. It is not found in the absence of trouble, but in the presence of trust. This stillness is peace, not the fragile kind the world offers, but the peace that flows from heaven, the peace that comes when you place your life in the hands of the one who holds the future. And trusting God is not simply believing that he exists. It is believing that he reigns, that he is good, that his decisions are better than your desires. It is believing that even when your path is dark and your vision is clouded, his hand is sure and steady. Every heart longs for peace. The world chases it in 1,000 directions, through success, through relationships, through wealth, through escape, but none of it lasts. Peace built on circumstance is fragile. It rises and falls with the tide. One moment of bad news, one disappointment, one change in the wind, and it shatters. But peace that is built on God's sovereignty is immovable. It is anchored not in what happens, but in who he is. When you trust the hand that holds the future, you are no longer a slave to fear. You no longer need to control every outcome, force every door, or predict every step. The trust that leads to peace is not blind. It is rooted in knowing the one you trust. Trust grows when you remember his faithfulness, when you trace the fingerprints of God through the chapters of your life. Look back, and you will see it. You will see the doors he closed that you once begged him to open, and now you thank him they never did. You will see the roads he blocked, the people he removed, the plans he interrupted, all to bring you to a better place. What you once called disappointment, you now call deliverance. That is the fruit of trust. The heart that trusts does not demand to understand. It does not need all the answers to be at rest. It needs only to know who is leading. And when you know it is God, you stop striving to make things happen your way. You stop fearing what lies ahead. You walk with a quiet confidence because you know the path is not random. It has been chosen by a hand that sees the end from the beginning. In the scriptures, peace and trust are bound together, like two sides of the same coin. You will keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts in you. The word for peace in the Hebrew is a salam, and it is not just quietness. It is wholeness, harmony, completeness. It is the restoration of what was broken, the alignment of what was out of order. And the gateway to that shalom is trust, not in systems, not in people, not in yourself, but in God. Trusting God is not passive. It is a choice made in the face of uncertainty. It is a weapon in the midst of warfare. It is what enables you to stand when everything around you is shaking. The disciples were in the boat, the storm rising, the waves crashing, and Jesus asleep. And in their fear they cried out, "Don't you care that we're perishing?" But he stood, rebuked the wind, calmed the sea, and said, "Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith?" The storm outside was not the real danger. It was the storm inside. The absence of trust was louder than the wind. But when they realized who was in the boat with them, peace returned. There will be times when God's path will not make sense. There will be moments when the road is narrow, when the answers are delayed, when the silence is long. But peace does not come from knowing the plan. It comes from knowing the planner. When you place your trust in his character, in his goodness, in his power, then you are no longer shaken by what you do not see. You become anchored in the unseen. You begin to live by faith, not by sight. The future is unknown to us, but not to him. He is already there. He walks ahead, prepares the way, clears the path, and sets the time. When you trust that, you stop fearing the next chapter. You start to rest in the author. And when the author is faithful, the story is secure. Peace is not a prize for those who figure everything out. It is a gift for those who trust while walking through the mystery. There is a reason why peace eludes so many. It's not because they don't seek it, not because they don't pray for it, but because they have not truly surrendered to the one who gives it. Peace is not a surface emotion that comes and goes with the winds of fortune. It is not something manufactured through positive thinking or controlled environments. Peace is the natural fruit of a life that has yielded fully to the decisions of God. It comes when we stop fighting the will of heaven and start aligning ourselves with the rhythm of eternity. From the beginning, mankind has wrestled with the voice of God. In the garden, the enemy whispered the lie that God's decisions could not be trusted, that perhaps his boundaries were not for our good. And man believed the lie, reaching for control, stepping outside of trust, and in doing so, forfeited peace. Ever since that moment, the heart of man has been at war, not first with the world, but with God. The unrest of the human soul is born in rebellion, and the only remedy is return. Peace is not the absence of struggle, but the presence of surrender. There are battles we are not meant to fight, battles against doors that won't open, against seasons we can't control, against outcomes we were never meant to determine. The reason so many walk in weariness is because they are carrying burdens never assigned to them. But when you come under God's covering, when you accept not only his presence but his choices, you step into a divine rest that cannot be shaken by what surrounds you. Jonah ran from God's decision. He didn't agree with the mission, didn't like the direction. And as he fled, so did his peace. The storm followed him, not because God was angry, but because God was pursuing. The tempest was not punishment, it was grace. God would rather send a storm than let Jonah live a peaceful life in disobedience. And when Jonah finally yielded, not only did he find peace, but others did too. His surrender didn't just rescue him, it impacted a city. The decisions of God are not just about you. They are connected to destinies beyond your own. When you resist God's will, you create turbulence in your soul. You may not see it on the outside. You may smile, say all the right words, carry yourself with confidence. But underneath, there is unrest, a quiet chaos. Anxiety creeps in, worry takes root. Fear grows, and it all begins when we say in our hearts, "I know better." But the moment we say, "Your will be done," something shifts. The chaos loses its grip. The striving fades. The heart begins to rest because it has returned to its true position under the authority of God. Trust is not just about waiting for God to move. It's about moving with Him when He leads, in directions you never expected. It's about following when it doesn't make sense, obeying when it costs you, staying when everything in you wants to flee, going when everything in you wants to stay. This is the trust that produces peace. It is not soft or sentimental. It is strong. It is fierce. It is fierce. It is forged in fire and sealed in surrender. Abraham laid Isaac on the altar, not because he understood, but because he trusted. And in that moment of surrender, he encountered the God who provides. The peace did not come after the ram appeared. It came when the decision was made to obey. That kind of trust tears down every idol, strips away every illusion of control, and builds a life that cannot be moved. That kind of peace is not circumstantial. It is covenantal. The world tells you that peace comes when you take charge, when you secure the outcome, when you hedge every risk. But the kingdom of God tells you the opposite, that peace comes when you lay it all down, when you lose your life for His sake, when you accept that the throne belongs to Him and not to you. And in that loss, you find gain. In that surrender, you find security. In that yielding, you find rest. Rest. There is a divine stillness reserved for those who stop striving, not those who give up, but those who give over. Those who no longer say, I must have this, but rather if you choose it, I'll receive it. If you deny it, I'll trust you. If you lead here, I'll walk. If you turn, I'll follow. This is the life of peace, not because it's easy, but because it's anchored. Not because it avoids storms, but because it's grounded in the one who walks on water. There is a sacred exchange that takes place when a soul lets go of its own agenda and embraces the will of God. It is not a moment of loss, but a moment of liberation. The chains of anxiety fall, the burden of control breaks, and the heart finds what it has longed for. Peace, not as the world gives, but as only heaven can impart. This is not the peace that rests on circumstance, but the peace that transcends it. It comes not from knowing what the future holds, but from knowing who holds it. The deepest rest comes not when everything falls into place, but when we fall into place, but when we fall into alignment with the purposes of God. There is something supernatural that happens when you say not just with your lips, but with your life, your will be done. That phrase is not just the conclusion of a prayer. It is the doorway to peace. It is the key that unlocks the tension in the soul. To live in God's peace is to live in submission to His wisdom, His timing, His unfolding plan. It means accepting not only His promises, but also His process. Every time you choose to trust instead of worry, to surrender instead of strive, you are building a sanctuary of peace within your heart. You are creating space for heaven to dwell in the midst of your chaos. There is a reason the psalmist says, be still and know that I am God. Stillness is not passive. It is a declaration. It says, I am not God and I don't need to be. It silences the voice of panic, hushes the demand for control, and lifts your eyes beyond the immediate to the eternal. Peace is not found in answers. It is found in the presence of the answer Himself. There is a lesson in the wilderness, in the waiting, in the quiet seasons where God seems hidden. In those places, He is training you to rely not on sight, but on trust. Not on open doors, but on His voice. Not on outcomes, but on obedience. The peace that carries you through the storm is born in those silent seasons, when you choose to believe even without seeing, to follow even without clarity. That is the kind of peace that stands when the winds blow, the kind that anchors when the earth shakes. Jesus, on the night of His greatest trial, spoke of peace, not to those who were safe, not to those who were secure, but to those who were about to face fear, betrayal, confusion, and loss. Give me peace I give to you, He said. Not as the world gives do I give it to you. He was not speaking of comfort. He was speaking of authority. His peace rooted in the unshakable will of the Father. And that same peace He offers to all who will trust in that same will. The decisions of God are often different from what we expected, what we hoped for, what we planned, but they are never without purpose. When He closes a door, it is to protect or redirect. When He allows delay, it is to deepen and prepare. When He permits pain, it is never cruel, it is redemptive. But peace only comes when we stop resisting those decisions and start resting in them. Struggle is not in the circumstances, it is in our response to them. Will we fight the hand of God, or will we trust that His hand is good, even when it leads us through fire? There is a great deception in the world, and it is this, that peace is found in having control. But the truth of the kingdom is the opposite. Peace is found in giving it up. The more tightly we grasp, the more we lose. The more we let go, the more we gain. When we cling to our version of how life should unfold, we create frustration. But when we open our hands and say, God, I trust what you allow. I trust what you withhold. I trust what you choose. We become like trees planted by the water, steady, fruitful, unshaken. God does not call us to understand all his ways. He calls us to walk with him, to yield, to follow. Peace is the companion of surrender. And surrender is not giving up. It is giving over. It is saying, I no longer carry the weight of having to know, having to fix, having to make it happen. It is transferring the responsibility from your shoulders to his, and he alone is able to carry it. The peace that surpasses understanding does not come by striving harder. It comes by surrendering deeper. It is the result of a heart that no longer resists the potter's hand, but yields to it, knowing that the one who shapes the clay knows exactly what he is doing, even when the clay cannot see the finished work.